Harley Quinn was back again on our app screens this week for a brand new episode entitled The Floronic Man. Now, I'm Cape Joel in this video series where I give my thoughts and feelings on the episode that was, while also shouting out any comic book Easter eggs or references I can find. So with that out of the way, let's not waste any more time, let's get right into it, shall we? So, in last week's episode, we were given an explanation as to why beloved crew members Bane and King Shark found their way to Metropolis alongside Harley and Ivy, and you won't be surprised to learn that this week, Clayface ends up getting the very same treatment. It seems that he is trying out his one-man show in the off Broadway scene of Metropolis, and oh yes, it is every bit as pretentious and boring as every other one-man show I've ever been dragged to. What can I say? Not everyone is John Leguizamo. What makes this scene truly hilarious is that Clayface's whole deal is that he can change into other people, so his one-man show should actually be amazing. But for some reason, the dummy doesn't even think to utilize his powers on stage. I have to wonder if this is going to come back later on, like a light bulb is going to go off in his head or something. When the reviews of his one-man Pearl Harbor show come in, they are understandably crushing, so much to the point Clayface vows to take it up with the Daily Planet personally. This, of course, ends up making up the backbone of this week's much less serious, much more silly, much more shenanigan-filled B-plot. And 3 episodes into Season 5, I think it's safe to assume that this is going to be the new show structure moving forward, a much more serious plot involving Harley and Ivy, and a more comedy-focused palate cleanser at the other end, which, you know, is fine. Again, it's very reminiscent of how they did things during the first 2 seasons. Even though I will admit in this episode the 2 different storylines do literally seem worlds apart, almost as if they were taking place in completely different shows, but it's a minor complaint. Of course, the real meat of this episode involves the fallout of Poison Ivy killing her shitty ex Jason Woodrow last week. Ivy is being haunted both literally and figuratively by her actions, and once Harley puts 2 and 2 together that obviously Ivy was the one who killed Jason, she's honestly a little hurt. Oh, not because her actions could potentially blow up the happy life the 2 lovers have just built for themselves here in Metropolis. No, Harley is mad that Ivy didn't tell her about it. I mean, it makes sense. They tell each other everything. Harley was very open with Ivy about all her trials and tribulations with the Joker, and yeah, this late in the relationship, she feels a little hurt that they're not being 100% Oprah honest with each other. Once again, Lake Bell and Kylie Cuoco absolutely kill the banter back and forth in this episode. Yes, Harley is mad at Ivy, but they're still madly in love with each other, and it still very much shows through. Right down to Harley knowing Ivy so well, she knows exactly when she takes her morning bowel movement every day. In fact, in a nice show of maturity, the couple agreed to put this little spat on hold just long enough so Harley can come and support Ivy during her big green Metropolis presentation at the grad school today, which is exactly what she ends up doing. Of course, the specter hanging over all of this is actually Jason Woodrow, who, as I noted in the last video, isn't nearly as dead as we all believed. He has merely been reborn as the Floronic Man. And you know what? I actually give the episode all the credit in the world for having this not be a traditionally cut and dry revenge plot. Yeah, Jason could have easily gone after Ivy in the real world, but instead, he opts to use his newfound plant powers to invade the green and come at Ivy that way. Again, before I said she was haunted, well yeah, he literally haunts her through a good chunk of the episode. Which to me feels just right when we stop and consider that the whole Swamp Thing, green, Floronic Man comic stories did kind of live in the horror genre for a long time. Now, at the other end of the episode, we're introduced to the cast of the Daily Planet. Some of these characters we've obviously met before, like Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, but some are brand new, like the whole head of the operation, Perry White. As a comic fan, I gotta tell you, I was absolutely tickled pink to hear Perry say fuck. Again, never has a comic character existed in my mind who has more wanted to drop an F-bomb, yet never could. I mean, seriously, every time he said Great Caesar's Ghost, you know what he actually wanted to say. Clayface vows that if Perry and the Planet won't write a good, glowing review of his one-man show, he'll simply write it himself by kidnapping Perry and assuming his form via shape-shifting. Also, in a fun voice acting gag that you might very well miss unless you read the credits at the end of the episode, Perry White was already voiced by Alan Tudyk before Clayface's Alan Tudyk even assumed his form. Seriously, mark my words, one of these days they are going to do an episode of Harley Quinn that is just Alan Tudyk talking to himself. I mean, he's voiced just enough characters in 5 seasons. The big hurdle Clayface needs to overcome this episode is that he can't actually write a review for his own work. So he decides to recruit Bane to help him out in a nice little callback to the fact that Bane is a fan of the written word and actually cares a lot about grammar, despite the fact that he regularly says things like explosions and extravaganzas. Again, none of this is a particularly life-changing subplot. I'm not going to sit here and say the characters had any meaningful arcs to speak of, but it is a lot of fun, and it certainly opens the door for future shenanigans. You see, after Clayface gets his glowing review, he just decides to stay as Perry and even hires Bane as their brand new head columnist. Naturally, this royally pisses off Lois Lane, who is desperately trying to crack the big case that we as the viewer know is actively related to Brainiac, the big bad of the season. And I can only assume everything that's happening at the Daily Planet will no doubt dovetail with everything else that's going on with Harley and Ivy. And hey, speaking of, Ivy ends up having to cut her big presentation short due to the Floronic Man's attacks, and once she realizes that this might be connected to the Green, she opts to go into it to face the problem head on. And man, you know what, I said it before in that Swamp Thing episode and I'll say it again, I can't believe the silly raunchy comedy show that is Harley Quinn has actually done a better job showcasing the Green as a metaphysical concept and what it means for the DC universe more than, well, basically any other DC show. Ivy isn't in the Green long before she ends up coming under attack by a vengeful Floronic Man, who I will say looks pretty damn good, basically a 100% faithful translation of his comic counterpart. And you know what, hats off to the writers for actually managing to resist the comedic impulse to make fun of his name right away. For the record, in the books, they clearly weren't happy with Floronic Man all the time because Jason Woodrow had several other aliases over the years, including Plant Master, Floro, and even Cedar. You can also tell the animation team had a real blast too, getting to draw Poison Ivy having a big knockdown, drag-out personal fight with another plant-themed villain who can use a lot of the same tricks she can. Naturally, Harley jumps into action to try and save her love, and to do so, she even ends up recruiting the help of Frank the Plant, once again voiced by J.B. Smoove. It's actually really nice to see Frank again. It feels like he didn't get a ton of play in Season 4. This sets up our big action-packed finale, as Frank the Plant must also go into the Green to assist Ivy in fighting off the Floronic Man, while Harley must manage her way through the grad school to try and find Jason Woodrow's body and kill him for good the second time, along the way seeing all sorts of funny student sight gags along the way. And I will say, when Harley actually does manage to get her hands on the Floronic Man, she really goes to town on him with a sawzall. Harley, of course, is a series that never shied away from violence for comedic effect, but man, do they have a lot of fun tearing into Jason and chopping him up. In the end, the villain is vanquished, the day is saved, and Harley and Ivy manage to reconcile their problems. Though if you're like me, you're probably saying, wait, did they not just kill the same man twice in the same place? Surely someone's gonna catch on, and they do. As the episode ends with both Harley and Ivy getting themselves arrested by Brainiac's robots. Again, that's kind of been the thing happening in the background throughout this season. Yes, Metropolis is perfect, but only because Brainiac and his robots have actively been interceding. But why would they be doing that? Well, I guess we'll have to tune in next week to find out. And so that was Floronic Man, everyone. And overall, I thought this was a pretty good episode. Not a great episode, maybe not one of my favorites, but it's one that ends up doing a lot of things right. I like that Jason and the Floronic Man served as fun little early season antagonists that needed to be overcome, divorced from anything else that's currently going on in the bigger Brainiac story. The fight scene within the Green is really solid. I mean, anytime the Green comes back, I'm gonna be a big fan of that. Clayface's subplot was funny, worth a couple good chuckles here and there. And the stage is now officially set for the Daily Planet and its cast of characters to probably end up having a bigger impact on the series moving forward. And yeah, really, that's all I gotta say about that. So again, everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to join me next week when we do it all over again. Until then, I have been Cave Joel. You can find me across all of social media. Be sure to follow me. Be sure to leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm, and I will be back again next week, everyone. Bye-bye.